When Rachel and I parted ways, it wasn't anything dramatic or tear-filled. No yelling, no blame, just silence, a quiet that settled between us like the death of something that had once been full of life. But what was truly worse than the breakup itself was everything that followed. It all started when I discovered she had been hiding the truth about where she spent her weekends. "Rachel, where were you last Saturday?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though something inside me was already on edge. "You told me you were with your sister." Her eyes flickered, a subtle, nervous shift that I couldn't ignore. "I was," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. "No, you weren't," I replied, trying not to show my growing suspicion. "I called her, and she told me she hadn't seen you in weeks." The moment her face froze, panic washing over her, I knew something was wrong. I meant I was with Donna," she stammered, quickly trying to cover up the slip. I must have gotten confused. That was the first sign that something wasn't right, but I ignored it. I wanted to trust her. We had been together for 5 years, engaged for 2, with a wedding already in the works. The dates were set, invitations sent out, and plans were made. I couldn't just walk away from that, not over a small mistake. At least, that's what I tried to tell myself. But over the following weeks, she grew more distant, unreachable. When I finally confronted her, her response was to explode, as if I were suffocating her. "Bradley," she shouted one evening, her voice sharp with frustration. "Why are you always asking where I am? What I'm doing? Do you think I'm a child?" "No, Rachel," I said, my voice steady, though it felt like everything inside me was starting to crack. "I think you're my fiancée, and I'm just trying to understand why you're acting like this." Instead of answering, she grabbed a bag and left. "I need space," she told me before she disappeared from my life. At first, I waited. I thought she'd return, that everything would go back to normal. But days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear a word from her. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was like I didn't exist anymore. And by that point, the anger had faded, replaced with an overwhelming sense of hurt. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. So, I did what had to be done. I canceled the wedding. I called the venue, the caterer, the florist, everyone who was involved, and let them know it was off. Then, I had to inform our families and friends that we were done. It wasn't just an engagement ending. It felt like the collapse of everything we had worked for, the future we had planned. But deep down, I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't keep forcing something that was already broken. Then came the call from Rachel's brother, Mark. "Hey, Bradley," he started, his tone awkward. "How have you been?" I didn't need to guess where this was going. "Let me guess," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Rachel asked you to talk to me, didn't she?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Well, yeah, kind of. She's been really upset, and she wants to fix things." "Fix things?" I laughed bitterly, the hurt and disbelief creeping back into my voice. "She ghosted me for weeks, Mark. Weeks. She left me wondering what I did wrong. And now she wants to fix things?" Mark sighed, his voice softening. "She knows she messed up. She wants to meet and talk about it." "No, Mark," I said firmly. "If she wanted to talk, she could have picked up the phone. She's had plenty of chances already. I'm done." Mark persisted. "Bradley, you two were good together. Don't just throw that away." "She already did," I shot back. "And I'm done picking up the pieces." The line went silent for a moment, and I could hear Mark carefully choosing his words. He wasn't one for confrontation, but I knew he cared about Rachel. Still, I wasn't going to let him guilt me into reopening things with her. "I get it, man," Mark said quietly. "But Rachel's a mess. She doesn't know how to fix it, but she wants to try." "She's had plenty of chances to try, Mark," I said, trying to hold my frustration in check. "She lied to me, disappeared without a word. I'm not some backup plan she can turn to when things aren't going her way." I heard him sigh again, the weight of the conversation heavy between us. "Please, just hear her out. You both deserve closure." "Closure," I repeated, the words sounding bitter on my tongue. "I don't need closure. What I need is honesty. I need her to stop treating me like I don't matter. I'm done." And with that, I ended the call. I couldn't believe Rachel thought I'd just pick up where we left off. The nerve. But little did I know, that wasn't the end of it. The very next day, Rachel's mother called. Her voice was laced with concern, her words soaked in regret. She said Rachel had been devastated by the breakup, that she was sorry for everything, and wanted to make things right. But as I listened to her, I felt my resolve harden. "I'm done, Mrs. Thompson," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel pushed me away. She lied to me, ghosted me for weeks, and I can't trust her anymore. I just can't. Her mother insisted, her voice growing more desperate. "She's been through a lot, Bradley. She's changed. She wants to fix it. Please, just give her a chance." "I've already given her chances," I snapped, frustration bubbling to the surface. "She doesn't get to make me the fallback option when things go wrong." The conversation ended shortly after that, but the words lingered. I had already made my decision. I couldn't go back. But that wasn't the last I would hear from Rachel or her family. A few days later, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. The envelope was unmistakably from Rachel, her handwriting unmistakable. My heart sank as I stared at it, wondering if I should just throw it out. But a twisted curiosity kept me from doing so. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. It was everything I had come to expect from Rachel. Dramatic, pleading, filled with emotional promises. She apologized for everything, told me how much she missed me, and said she wanted to fix things. But then about halfway through, the tone shifted. "I still have the key to your apartment," she wrote. "I've been thinking about stopping by so we can talk face to face. I've even found a counselor for us. I know we can make this work if we just try." I froze, my stomach twisting. The key. I had changed the locks after she left, but just the thought that she still thought she could walk into my home without my permission made my skin crawl. The next day, I wrote back, keeping it short and to the point. "Rachel, I've already moved on, and you need to do the same. Please don't contact me again." I thought that would be the end of it, but of course I was wrong. A few days later, as I was in the middle of cooking dinner, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and as soon as I opened it, I saw Rachel's sister, Olivia. Her face was tense, her expression heavy as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. "What are you doing here?" I asked, already irritated. "Did Rachel send you?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes flicking to the ground for a moment before meeting my gaze. "No, Bradley. This is just me. I need to talk to you. It's important." I stepped back, folding my arms. "I'm not interested, Olivia. Tell your sister it's over." Her voice softened, but there was an urgency to it. "Please, Bradley. You need to know the truth about Rachel. Something you don't know. Maybe then you'll understand why she did what she did." The words caught me off guard. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite myself. "What truth?" Olivia looked hesitant, but pressed forward. "Rachel, she didn't just disappear. She was with someone else." I blinked, my heart skipping a beat as the air around me thickened with tension. "Someone else?" I repeated, my mind racing. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" Olivia took a deep breath, her eyes full of a mix of guilt and resolve. "She went away with him, Bradley. Someone she met at the gym. She wanted to see where things would go with him, to figure out her feelings." The floor seemed to fall out beneath me. The anger surged like a storm rising inside me. She went away with another man?" Olivia continued, oblivious to the fury building inside me. "But after a while, she realized she only wanted you. It was always you, Bradley." She was confused, but now she knows what she wants. She's asking for your forgiveness and wants to try again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal, the rage boiling inside me with every word she spoke. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice low and shaking with anger. "She cheats on me, goes away with someone else, and now she wants me to take her back." Olivia winced, but she stood firm. "She made a mistake, Bradley. She knows it now. She just wants you to understand." "Understand?" I snapped, stepping back. "She's out of her mind. This isn't something you just fix. It's over." Olivia looked like she wanted to argue, but she must have seen the finality in my expression because she said nothing else. Without another word, she turned and left, leaving me standing there, shaking with anger. As I slammed the door behind her, I felt my hands tremble. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the fact that Rachel had the audacity to think she could come back after all she had done. She was asking for forgiveness, But what about the damage she had caused? I knew one thing for sure. This was the end. There was no going back. A few days passed since my conversation with Jonathan, and the weight of the decision to file a restraining order weighed heavily on me. I didn't want to take things this far, but Rachel's behavior had gone beyond manipulation. She was becoming obsessive, and it felt like I was walking a thin line between dealing with heartbreak and protecting myself. The thought of it made me feel sick, but I knew I couldn't keep living in a constant state of fear and anxiety. But before I could take action, something else happened. As I stepped out of my car one evening, exhausted from work and the emotional turmoil that had been eating away at me for weeks, I froze. There she was, Rachel, standing there at the entrance to my apartment building, as if she had been waiting for me. My stomach dropped, my pulse quickened, and a knot of dread formed in my chest. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself, but the anger flared up almost immediately. The nerve of her. After everything, she still thought she could show up unannounced and make demands. Rachel took a few slow steps toward me, her face pale, eyes wide with desperation. I could see it in her, this frantic, almost wild energy that made me recoil. I crossed my arms and stood there, my body tense, refusing to let her get any closer. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice colder than I intended. The anger was raw, but there was something else too, something darker. Fear. Fear of what she might do next. "We need to talk, Bradley," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I love you. I can't let you go. Please." I could hardly believe my ears. The nerve. The audacity. After everything she had put me through, she still thought she had a right to say those words. I fought the urge to lash out, to scream at her, to finally let all the rage I had been holding and spill over. But I couldn't do that. Not now. Not after everything that had already happened. "No, Rachel," I said, my voice low, steady, controlled. "You've had your chances. You disappeared for weeks. You cheated on me. I know everything. And now, you think you could just waltz back into my life like nothing happened?" I took a step back, putting distance between us, and my chest tightened with every word. She took a step forward, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, as if that would make me forget what she had done. "Please, Bradley, I know I messed up, but I can't live without you. I don't know what else to do. Just give me one more chance. Please." Her desperation felt like a slap to my face. It wasn't love. It was obsession. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for control. And I couldn't allow that to happen. I couldn't let her keep me in this toxic, manipulative cycle. I stood my ground, my fists clenched at my sides. "No, Rachel, you don't get to do this. You don't get to manipulate me into feeling sorry for you. You made your choices. You hurt me. And now it's over." Her face crumpled, her expression crumbling under the weight of my words. "Bradley, please don't say that. I can't lose you again." I shook my head, disgust crawling up my spine. "You already lost me the moment you chose him. You went away with someone else. You betrayed me. And now, you think you can fix it by showing up and playing the victim?" Her eyes widened with shock. I made a mistake," she stammered, taking another step toward me, her voice trembling. "I thought I wanted him, but it was always you. Please, I'm sorry." The anger inside me reached a boiling point. Every word she spoke, every tear she shed, felt like another attempt to play me for a fool. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep being manipulated. I couldn't keep being the person she turned to when things didn't go her way. "No," I said, my voice hardening. "You don't get to come back. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm done. I made my decision, and I'm not going to change it." I turned to walk away, but she reached out, her hand trembling as she grabbed my arm. "Please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do anything. Please don't leave me like this." I felt a shudder run through me as I pulled away from her touch. "You need to leave, Rachel," I said, my voice sharp with finality. "I'm done. It's over." Her face twisted with confusion and pain, and I saw the panic in her eyes as I turned and walked toward my apartment. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had already made my decision. She didn't get to control this anymore. I got into my apartment, locking the door behind me, and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The weight of the confrontation had left me shaken, but deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't let Rachel back into my life, not after everything that had happened. But as I stood there, processing everything, my phone buzzed. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever new emotional plea was coming my way. It was a text from Olivia, Rachel's sister. Asterisk, Bradley, I know you're angry, but Rachel is falling apart. She's not herself. Please just give her a chance to explain. She's asking for forgiveness, and she wants to make things right. You two deserve that, don't you think? Asterisk. I stared at the message for a long moment, my finger hovering over the screen. Olivia was just as persistent as Rachel, just as desperate to patch things up between us. But what more was there to say? Rachel had already made her choices. She had already lied to me, betrayed me, and played with my heart. Nothing would fix that. I dropped my phone onto the couch, feeling the weight of the decision I had made settling over me. But the quiet didn't last long. Later that night, as I sat on my couch staring blankly at the television, my doorbell rang. The sound was sharp in the silence of the apartment, and for a brief moment, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I got up cautiously, not knowing who to expect, but knowing deep down that it wouldn't be good. When I opened the door, there she was, Rachel. Again, standing there with tears in her eyes, her face pale, like the world was about to fall apart around her. I took one look at her and knew, without a doubt, that this was the end. I stood there, frozen, at the sight of Rachel. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her posture slumped as if the weight of the world was bearing down on her. My initial impulse was to slam the door in her face and end it right then and there, but something held me back. Maybe it was the exhaustion from the constant barrage of emotional manipulation. Maybe it was the small, flickering part of me that still wanted to understand why this had happened. Either way, I couldn't just walk away. What are you doing here, Rachel? I asked, my voice sounding empty, like I was speaking from a place far removed from everything that had happened between us. She paused, her hands shaking as she reached for something in her bag. She looked down at the ground, as if gathering her thoughts. But when her eyes met mine again, they were filled with a mix of regret and desperation. I don't know what to say, Bradley. I'm sorry. I made the worst mistake of my life. She reached out a trembling hand, as if she thought I might reach for her too, but I took a step back, guarding myself. No, I said, my tone firm. You don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to walk in and out of my life playing with my emotions. She flinched, her face crumpling in a way that made me ache for a moment. But the ache didn't last. My mind was clear now. I had already seen enough. I had already given her too many chances. I know I've hurt you, Rachel continued, her voice cracking. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I can't live like this, Bradley. I can't be without you. I've realized everything I've done, everything that's happened. It's been because of my own confusion. I thought I wanted someone else, but I've only ever wanted you. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me one more chance. The words echoed in my mind, but instead of breaking me, they hardened my resolve. I'd been here before. I'd heard this same song and danced countless times. Each time, the promises, the apologies, the desperation had only come after she'd made her own choices and hurt me. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done to me. She was sorry she hadn't gotten what she wanted. You don't get to play me like this anymore, I said, my voice sharp, though it felt like it came from a place deep inside me, like a final wall of defense had gone up. I'm not your second choice, Rachel. I'm not your backup plan. I've already moved on. Rachel looked at me, her face contorted in pain, as if my words physically wounded her. But I stood my ground. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I can't believe you're doing this, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. You cheated on me. You abandoned me without a word. And now you think I should just forget all of that? You want me to take you back after you've done all of this? Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. I could see her struggling, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. She hadn't been expecting this. She had thought maybe that by showing up like this, by acting desperate and vulnerable, I'd soften. But I didn't. I couldn't. You need to leave, Rachel, I said, my voice cold and final. This is over. Rachel opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. You don't get to do this to me anymore. I'm done. I'm not your safety net. I'm not the person you can just come back to when things go wrong for you. I deserve better than this. I turned my back on her and walked toward my apartment, but she stepped forward, desperate. Bradley, please, she cried, her voice raw with emotion. I love you. I always have. I made a mistake, and I need you to forgive me. I shook my head, fighting to keep the anger from spilling over. You don't get to tell me how to feel anymore. I've already made my decision, and that decision is that I'm done. I slammed the door behind me, the sound reverberating in the small hallway. I leaned against the door for a moment, feeling the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. My chest tightened, and I could hear her muffled sobs through the door, but I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. As I stood there, my phone buzzed. I picked it up without thinking, and when I saw the name on the screen, Olivia, Rachel's sister, I felt a heavy sigh escape me. I didn't want to talk to anyone in her family. I didn't want to hear any more pleas, any more apologies. But when I swiped to answer, I knew I had to at least hear her out. Bradley. Olivia's voice was softer than I expected, almost cautious. Please just hear Rachel out. She's falling apart. She can't stop crying. You need to talk to her. She needs you. I don't need to talk to her, Olivia. I snapped, my patience worn thin. I'm done. Rachel needs to figure out how to deal with her own actions. I'm not going to be dragged into this mess anymore. Olivia was silent for a moment, then sighed. I get it, Bradley. I do. But she's not handling this well. She really regrets what happened. Regret doesn't fix anything, I replied, my voice cold. She had plenty of chances to make things right. She chose not to. I'm done trying to save someone who doesn't even care enough to save themselves. Olivia didn't respond. I knew she was probably trying to find the right words, but there was nothing left to say. The silence hung heavy between us until I broke it. I'm sorry, Olivia, I said, my voice softening but firm. I have to go. I hung up and dropped my phone onto the couch. The weight of the decision felt like it was crushing me, but at the same time, it was liberating. I couldn't go back. I couldn't let Rachel keep pulling me into her chaos. That night, as I lay in bed, I tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. The anger had faded, but the sadness remained. I wasn't just grieving the loss of Rachel. I was grieving the life I thought we were going to have together, the plans we had made, the future that had been ripped away. But as the days went by, that sadness started to transform. It didn't consume me like it had before. Slowly but surely, I began to feel a sense of relief, of lightness. I wasn't carrying Rachel's baggage anymore. I wasn't dealing with her mistakes. And then, just when I thought I was finally starting to heal, the doorbell rang once more. The doorbell echoed through my apartment like a reminder of everything I was trying to leave behind. I stood frozen for a moment, my heart racing. I didn't want to answer it. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole, but part of me, maybe the last bit of me that was still holding on, was hoping it wasn't Rachel. I took a deep breath and opened the door, already bracing myself for whatever was about to come. But to my surprise, it wasn't Rachel. It was someone I hadn't expected, not in a million years, Sarah. Sarah had been my college roommate, one of the few people I trusted without question. She had moved out of the city years ago, and our contact had been sporadic at best. We kept in touch through messages and social media, but nothing that would bring her to my doorstep. Seeing her now, standing in front of me, was like a breath of fresh air in a room that had been stale for far too long. Bradley, she said with a small, cautious smile. I know this is probably the last thing you were expecting, but can I talk to you for a minute? I stepped back, still in a daze from the surprise of it all. Sarah, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? She nodded, but her eyes held a sadness I hadn't seen before. I heard about everything that's been going on with Rachel, and I know you don't want to hear it, but I'm here because I can't stand seeing you go through this alone. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to close the door and keep the world out. But another part of me, the part that was tired of carrying this weight alone, opened the door wider, and let her in. We sat down on the couch, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was genuinely there for me. Someone who didn't have an agenda, someone who didn't want anything from me except my peace. Sarah didn't try to convince me to talk to Rachel, didn't offer empty words of comfort. She just listened, and for the first time in months, I found myself opening up. I told her everything, the lies, the betrayal, the constant manipulation. I told her how I tried to make it work, how I'd loved Rachel with everything I had, but how she had ripped it all apart. "You did the right thing, Bradley," Sarah said when I finally finished. "You don't owe anyone an explanation for setting boundaries, especially not someone who didn't respect them in the first place." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been beating myself up for weeks, wondering if I had made the wrong choice, if there was something more I could have done. But hearing someone who knew me well enough to see past the emotions and tell me the truth, it felt like a weight was lifted from my chest. "You're right," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I'm done with all of it. It's time to move on." That night, after Sarah left, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The anger and betrayal were still there, lurking beneath the surface, but there was something else now. There was clarity, and that clarity was what I needed to move forward. I realized that I had been living in the past for too long, clinging to something that wasn't even real anymore. I'd been holding on to a future that was never going to happen because Rachel had made sure of it. I had to let go. I had to allow myself the space to heal, to rediscover who I was without her. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I started going to therapy to unpack the emotional damage I'd endured. I spent time with friends who supported me, who encouraged me to put myself first. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned while I was with Rachel, things that made me feel alive, things that reminded me of who I was before all of this. Then one day, as I was walking through the park, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Lily. She was sitting on a bench, reading a book, and there was something about the way she smiled at me when I accidentally dropped my coffee cup that caught my attention. We started talking, and it wasn't like anything I had experienced with Rachel. There was no pressure, no need to perform or pretend. It was easy. For the first time in a long time, I found myself enjoying someone's company without fear, without the baggage of past mistakes weighing me down. We spent the afternoon together talking about everything and nothing, and by the end of it, I realized something. I wasn't just healing, I was living again. I was finally free. Rachel had broken me, but in doing so, she had also given me the greatest gift, the ability to rebuild myself, to find my worth without needing her approval. And as much as it hurt to let go of the life I had imagined with her, I knew I had done the right thing. Life wasn't about holding on to the past. It was about moving forward, embracing the future with open arms. As I walked back to my apartment that evening, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt lighter than I had in months. The chaos was behind me. The drama, the manipulation, the lies, it was all part of a chapter one was closing. I wasn't the same person I was before. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future, because I knew, no matter what happened, I would be okay.